Hello, welcome to the Combat Chats podcast. This week we're going to be talking about the upcoming fight night. Should be a really interesting one. If you start us off.
So the first fight on the card this week, we got Chris Curtis against Rodolfo Vieira, which is a very entertaining matchup. We've got a jiu-jitsu guy in Rodolfo Vieira. He's won many titles in grappling before transitioning to MMA. I think his record is, I want to say 7-1.
Very close. 8-1, 8-1.
We saw with him in his debut in the UFC. I think he got submitted, which was a bit of a shock to everyone, but I think it was his debut against, was it Anthony Hernandez's debut? I'm pretty sure it was. And I don't think with him it's like, obviously he's got the jiu-jitsu advantage on pretty much everyone in that division, but I think it's like from his past fights, there's not a certain willingness that most fighters have to get hit. He's not used to that feeling yet. You can kind of tell, like, he backs up quite a lot. He reacts weirdly to strikes, and so it's going to be an interesting matchup because, as we know, Chris Curtis is an animal on the feet.
Definitely so. I mean, it should be a really interesting one. It's a good point you made out about the getting punched and whatnot. He did, lose to Anthony Hernandez. I think it might have been, as you said, it was very early on in his UFC career. I think one of the things is that what was he, like an 8-time world champion in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, well, I think he's 3-time world champion, and it's like nine. Yeah, he's got a European Open Championship. He's got many like titles that are just below that world championship level.
So lots of championships, at that elite level of jiu-jitsu. And I think that what a lot of people don't understand is, yes, whilst, you will build up some good jiu-jitsu ability from these competitions and from training jiu-jitsu at such a high level, I think that's also important to remember that training in jiu-jitsu is very different to training jiu-jitsu in an MMA sense. In an MMA sense, when you train jiu-jitsu, you're training against getting punched. You're training against, holding your guard while someone's throwing an elbow at you. There are all these different factors. And whilst you might learn a lot of, self-defense jiu-jitsu from perhaps, typical jiu-jitsu classes, how many of him he would have been attending because of the high level he was competing at, I'm not too sure. But I know that if you ever go to a jiu-jitsu class, one of the first things they teach you about is learning how to defend somebody throwing a punch at you through using jiu-jitsu. Learning what to do. Say, for example, someone does hit you to the floor and they have all weapons nearby, using it. So I think that it is applicable to a certain extent, but when you're high at that level, when you're training at that level, I can't imagine he's doing many lessons. I can't imagine he's doing much training where he's having to try and learn to defend against strikes like that. And I think that Chris Curtis is going to be a really interesting challenge for him because although, yes, he is definitely going to have that grappling advantage, Chris Curtis, as you said, animal with feet.
Yeah, it's interesting because Vieira has gassed a little bit in his previous fights. If you put a lot of pressure on him, like I said, he doesn't react well. And when in your head you're like, as a fighter, you've kind of got to enjoy every part of fighting. Like, I mean, we've trained slightly. But like even after a while, I'd say a year of my boxing training, like you get used to getting hit. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, no,
it's
of
not
course.
like a thing where you're like, I remember when you first get hit, you're like trying to swing your head out the way and you just look like an idiot as you're doing it. And I'm not saying Vieira looks like that because he's still more high level than me. You saw in his last fight, like excellent, like a lot of improvements. But it's interesting because Chris Curtis is going to be like foot to the pedal from round one. And I like your point about how much he would have been training to defend other attacks because he was such at a high level of jiu-jitsu. Because we see wrestlers where they're state champions and the best in their state in America, where they won't train anything else but wrestling throughout their college days. Like that's all their time has to be concentrated on that specific sport.
I think that is really interesting because I think that when it comes down to training something like MMA, if you want to go to MMA, it's important to learn the basic fundamental individual martial arts and
Yeah.
disciplines. It really is. But if you don't do any MMA training, say for example your mindset is I'm going to train jiu-jitsu for 3 years, then start training MMA. Yes, as I said, you'll learn some of the elements from maybe, the self-defense part of jiu-jitsu because that is what a lot of it is. That's a big part of it and that's why it's so great. But you're not training against people who are necessarily going to be in the competition with you, who are going to be throwing stuff like elbows. And as you said about wrestling, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
If you're a state champion wrestler, if you're wrestling at a college or at a high level in high school, you're wrestling training against wrestling takedowns, which obviously are very applicable in the UFC, but you're not training against somebody throwing an uppercut. Either you're going to shoot them or you're not training against a flying knee.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely a big factor. I think that a lot of these fighters who would have been fighting since a young age, who would have been training since a young age in MMA, are going to have a slight advantage, not necessarily in the jiu-jitsu technique, because obviously training jiu-jitsu as an individual martial art, you're going to learn a lot about stuff like sweeps and a lot of stuff like that. You're going to get a much more refined jiu-jitsu training and knowledge development than you would if you were to train MMA jiu-jitsu, because you're focusing primarily all of your time on jiu-jitsu. You're getting the most out of your jiu-jitsu lessons because no time's being taken up by learning how to throw elbows or throw knees. But I think that it does provide a big gap. There aren't a lot of fighters who necessarily, go on to do really, really well. Obviously, there's quite a few kickboxers and whatnot. But for the most part, if you look at the vast majority of fighters, they're fighters who've been training MMA. Yes, we have the likes of Anderson Silva and whatnot. And as well as that, Israel Adesanya. But if we look at fighters like these are also fighters who have been training different disciplines from a very, very young age.
Yeah, I mean, with Anderson, the thing that worked for him is he couldn't wrestle the best, which is the opposite with Izzy, where Izzy has an excellent takedown defense. But the thing that Anderson had to back up is if you take him down, you got to worry about every submission possible off his back. And the thing about this Vieira fight, it's a really hard one to call because it could go. You see the Charles Oliveira fights in the past where he gets dropped and no one wants to jump on him. If Chris Curtis drops Vieira, I'm sure he'll be jumping on him trying to get the finish. He's a bit of a wild man, you know what I mean? Like he's always looking for that finish, and it's going to be interesting because it's really about who can apply their game. I don't think Vieira can do a lot on the feet with Chris Curtis. I think the jab could be a very good weapon. He's a very big guy, probably packs a lot of power in his hands as well, but I think Chris Curtis, I think I'm going to lean towards Chris Curtis just because he'll have such a big advantage on the feet. And if Vieira can't get the takedown quick, then I can see him getting caught with something big.
I'm going to have to agree with you. I think that Chris Curtis, being the phenomenal striker he is, he throws bombs and he throws a lot of them and he throws them fast, he throws them powerful, he starts off quick, he starts off hard, and he just doesn't ever give you any time to go. And I don't think that Vieira is necessarily going to struggle too much when it comes to the ground. Although I just think about the intensity of him going forward towards him, being hit with those strikes early on. I think even in half guard, unless he's able to transition quick enough, just the brute force of that ground and pound. I mean, I don't know if you've seen him ground and pound before.
Yeah, I have, but I do think if it touches the mat, Curtis is going to be in trouble very quickly, unless he's really rocked him bad, because Vieira has won multiple awards in Jiu-Jitsu, and although he did get submitted in his debut in the UFC, he's also came back and won by submission second. And I mean, I think with my prediction, I'm going to go Chris Curtis, but I would not be surprised if Vieira gets the submission win.
My primary thought when it comes down to when it cuts the mat is it depends on how it happens. I don't think he's going to jump into his guard. I don't think that he's going to look to attack it too early when he hits the ground, because I think he's going to be more intelligent than that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a decision he's going to make. But I also think that if he does, I don't know if Vieira is going to be in a position where Vieira is going to be able to perform his high-level jiu-jitsu, because when it gets to that point, if he's making that decision to go to the ground, I genuinely think he's intelligent enough to know not to leap on him if it's going to result in trouble. I mean, it can always happen.
Yeah.
It can always happen, but I think that he's going to have a bit more of an IQ, and I don't think he's going to leap onto it. I don't think that he's definitely going to try and take it to the ground. He doesn't do that normally.
No.
I mean, yeah, he can wrestle a bit, but...
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, we haven't seen much of Vieira's wrestling either. We've seen in his jiu-jitsu and his MMA career, but, I mean, he can get takedowns. He's better than the average jiu-jitsu practitioner, but I don't think he'd be able to take Chris Curtis down with ease. I think he might be able to take him down, and if he does, I think he'll get the win, but I think Chris Curtis will keep it standing long enough to find a shot.
I'd have to agree. I think that Chris Curtis is definitely go for an early finish. I think that he is going to win this one. I'm going to go with knockout second round, although saying that it could go either way. We'll see how the jiu-jitsu works out. Should be a really interesting one.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it could be first or second, but I also I'm just in my head. I can see a Vieira submission, but I'm not going to sit on the fence. I'm going to go with Chris Curtis. But watch out for Vieira's ground game because he is nasty on the ground.
Of course, of course. If you move on to the next fight.
Yeah. So the next fight we have Nathan Manes versus Umar Nurmagomedov, which is it's a great matchup. Manes a multiple time champion in I think it was it TKO MMA I want to say.
I think it was a couple of organisations,
Yeah.
but I think it was something like 3 different weights.
Yeah. Well, it was so it was bantamweight, flyweight, and did he go up to lightweight as well?
I think he fought as heavy as 155.
Yeah, lightweight. Yeah.
Lightweight. So yeah, really interesting. You don't get many fighters who fight at 3 different weights, let alone champions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially at that level of MMA. So it should be a really interesting one. Both really interesting fighters. Both have really interesting facts about them.
Yeah.
Nurmagomedov is Khabib's cousin.
Yeah, and he's a beast as well.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, as insane. But yeah, how do you think this one's gonna go?
Yeah, so I think I don't know the odds. If you can pull the odds up, then I'd love to see. But I think that I think Umar will be a big favourite. But Manes is such a beast. He can wrestle. His striking is very good. He's got some good knockouts on his resume. I watched his highlight reel and like big right hands. He can vicious body kicks, just like Umar as well. I think people think Umar is just more of a grappler because he is from that family, but he can strike. And I think this fight's going to be, I think it will be a bit like when Islam Makhachev fought Arman Tsarukyan, who's in the main event later on. I think it will be a bit like that where Umar's smoking everyone he's coming across so far, and then he's going to meet someone, and I think it will be a very close fight. And it will just show how high level both these guys are. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think it should be a really interesting fight. I think it's hard to call because both of which are very good fighters, up and comers.
Mm.
In the UFC in particular, there are a lot of fighters on this card who are up and comers. Funny enough, it's a card full of them, literally. But I think that with Nurmagomedov, he's good on the ground. He's good at wrestling. He's also a very, very good striker.
Mm.
Just because he's Khabib cousin, it doesn't mean that he's just a wrestler. He can strike really well.
Kick.
Body kicks, his roundhouse, honestly, really, really impressive. Saying that, as Manes can also fight very, very well.
Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like I've obviously I watched Manes's debut in the UFC. I think Tony Gravely it was. But when I did some research and went back through his career, this guy is very high level. Like he's a very good fighter, and I think this fight. I think it's going to be a very close fight. The predictions are a hard one for this. I have got in my head, I think Umar will have enough maybe just to get it done. But I mean, if Umar goes and dominates him, it just shows how good Umar is. So I'm going to go with Umar. I'm going to say decision. Obviously, Umar has a lot of finishes, but I think that Manes will have enough to drag it all the way. I think it'll be a close fight, but I think Umar will win it.
I mean, it's a really interesting one. I'm not too sure who's going to win it. I know that I feel like there was an interview where Nathan Manes said he wanted to knock him out. Which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Quite a big bold statement.
I mean, who do you think's better on the feet from what we've seen?
It's a hard one really because they're both really, really good on the feet. Really good. I feel like with Manes, he's quite good at boxing. I don't know if you observed that.
I think he's more well-rounded. He's got more weapons on the feet than Umar, maybe.
Definitely so. I mean, just watch him strike. He's very clean. He's very accurate. He connects well.
He's put a lot of people out as well. Like I think he's got, I want to say 6 off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say he's got 6 knockouts, a few submissions. I could be wrong. I might be mixing it up with another fight that's in my head, but so it's such a good matchup. The UFC are very good at putting on fights that the fans want to see, and I don't think this will like grab headlines in a sense, but I think afterwards it will. Do you have how many submissions he's got?
So it's 3 submissions, 5 knockouts / TKOs.
5 knockouts.
So they're very good at the finish. 6 decisions. So 14-1 record as well.
Yeah,
very impressive.
Umar's what 14-0. I want to say. I'm pretty sure he is. So so 14-1 against 14-0. Umar 14-0. Manes 14-1. It just shows. I mean, I think I think I want to say Umar's fought better competition, but they're both at a lower stage in their career, and I think they're both going to push on after this. But I think right now I'm going to have to go Umar. But I mean, I'd love to see Manesh push on, and I mean, I'm not biased towards anyone, but if he can get the win here and then move on and fight up more up and comers in the division, then I think both these fighters are going to be right up there in the rankings.
I mean, I do agree with you. I think that both these fighters are definitely going to be making the rankings at some point very soon.
Mm,
And it's going to be a really interesting one. I think that Nathan Benes, he's not bad on the ground. He's
mm,
also okay at wrestling. He's not going to do more,
mm,
but that's somewhat expected,
yeah.
really. It should be a really interesting one. As far as prediction for this one is concerned, it's quite hard because there are a few ways this fight could go.
Mm,
There's no clear cut way it's going to be either a knockout or a decision, or it's hard to tell how either going to fight. Nathan Menez is so versatile in his fighting style.
mm.
He's so versatile from fight to fight. Umar, also very versatile, whether he wants to keep it to the feet or take him down. I'm sure I'll say a takedown.
Yeah, I think
You see a few
we're
probably.
mixed up different, yeah.
But as far as this one's concerned, I'm going to have to go with Nurmagomedov. Second round finish perhaps.
Mm,
I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's gonna go. I think it's gonna go well for Nathan until that second round. I just think he's gonna get fatigued from
yeah,
the takedown and
yeah,
whatnot.
that
He has a
sounds
good level of
correct.
cardio, but I have seen him get gassed out. So
Mm.
should be an interesting one. Should be an interesting one. Anyway, moving on to the next fight.
Yeah, so the next fight is it's promised to be a barn burner because we have Thiago Moises taking on Christos. I want to say Gigos. How would you say it? Christos Gigos.
Christos Giagos.
Yeah, we'll go with that. But I'll just call him Christos. This fight, I mean, Christos is he's an animal. He just goes 100 miles per hour. He's got great cardio. I watched his fight with Dakar Close back the other day, and the way he can just the pace that he can fight at and keep it on in the late rounds. I mean, he's been in the UFC for years. He's fought a lot of great fighters. He's fought Gilbert Burns, Charles Oliveira. He actually got submitted by both of those. I'm pretty sure he's got a few submission losses, but he can wrestle. And I mean, Moises isn't a guy you want to jump on the ground with. He's very good on the ground. I think Christos could overwhelm him on the feet though, because um, I think the pace that he fights at is insane. And Thiago Moises is a veteran as well, and he's fought. I mean, he fought Islam Makhachev, and if you want to talk about pace, Islam Makhachev is your guy because I mean the constant pressure they put on through their wrestling. He did very well against Islam as well. But this is such a hard fight to call. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
So it's going to be a really, really interesting fight. I'm looking forward to this fight. It's probably one of my favourite fights to watch in the card,
Hmm.
just because it could be an absolute war. It could be a few things.
Hmm.
His last fight was Arman Sakarian, funny enough,
Yeah.
which was the main event
Hmm.
for this card. So yeah, it should be interesting. But as you said, he has fought some big fighters. He fought Charles Oliveira back in 2018, lost submission. So it should be a really hard one to call. He's very much jiu-jitsu based, for submissions. He's also got a few KOs as well. So as far as this one's concerned, I'm not too sure. He's very, very aggressive, as you said.
Yeah. Yeah. He is.
He's always going forward. He lands some heavy strikes. He's got good boxing,
Hmm.
and it's hard not to get put out by him. Thiago Boyd, on the other hand, also very, very good. He's got some amazing kicks,
Yeah. His kicks are very good.
side kicks, head kicks, leg kicks. Very,
The
very
question mark
versatile.
kick as well. He uses that very well. He'll look like he'll throw it into the body and he'll switch it up right to the head very quickly.
Very much so. And I think as well as that, I don't know if you've seen it, but he's dropped a few fighters through
Hmm.
body kicks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's going to be challenging for Yago to, as far as maintaining his stamina and his longevity through a fight. If I were to call this one, I'd probably have to go with Moyes, just because I think that although he's very aggressive, Aguirre and that, I don't think that it's going to necessarily play to his favour.
Hmm.
I think that he's going to be too aggressive. I think that Diego Moyes is going to pick him apart.
Yeah.
That's what I think personally, and I'm going to have to go with. I don't think it's going to be a knockout. I think that's going to be a very contested, a very busy fight. But I'm not going to go with a knockout. I'm going to go for a third round decision for Moyes.
Hmm. I'm gonna go the same direction as you. As I think Thiago Moises will have enough to win this fight, but I actually think that Gigas might overcommit and run into a submission. We've seen Moises has he's very dangerous on the ground. The way he submitted Michael Johnson in that fight, Michael Johnson had a very good first round, and as soon like in that fight, he was getting pushed against the cage and overwhelmed like Egos will look to do. And in the second round, he runs out and jumps onto a leg lock and submits him straight away. Like not much time at all to put in, and he grappled very well with Islam Makhachev as well. So I think I'm going to go a second round submission for that one.
Fair enough, fair enough. Anyway, if you will move on to the next fight.
Yeah, so the next fight for me is the most awkward fight on the card because Alan Barriol has uh so if you look him up, it doesn't actually come up with all his fights. So I was thinking, I swear I've seen him fight more than that. Once I tried looking through who he's fought, and obviously we've seen him fight Tom Aspinall, Rodrigo Ferreira, Parker, and he has struggled in the UFC so far. He's a decent fighter. I think he came into the UFC at 8-0, and he's on 3 losses in a row now. Tom Aspinall, there's no shame in losing to him.
No, not at all, not at all.
But Barriol, he's he's a bit wild. He gasses out. Um, it's just such a hard matchup to call.
I think it's a bit of an awkward one, really. I think that with Barrier, the way he fights, I think that it's okay if you're fighting at a lower level. If you're not fighting the UFC, if you're fighting against fighters which,
Yeah.
maybe aren't as conditioned or where it's a bit more prevalent, then fighting like that, you can do well.
Mm.
But I feel like the way he fights is not effective with the level of competition and the standard of fighters in the UFC and just the styles. We see a lot of fighters come from other organisations and whatnot. They take a step in the UFC after being very successful in their respective organisations, and they just don't do well because their style just doesn't work.
Mm.
Their techniques just don't work. He's a big, heavy hitter, but he gets tired very quickly.
Yeah.
And with him being a big, heavy hitter, I wouldn't say he's necessarily a super fast guy, would you?
No, he's I don't like coming across disrespectful in the podcast, but I'd even go as far as say he's sloppy at times because he'll reach down with his front hand a lot, look like he's going to touch the knee, and he'll swing over the top with just the right overhand. It's like playing UFC 4 when you're fighting someone who just spams the right overhand. And I think it's a decent weapon in this fight because Parisian, he's also, I mean, he makes his striking work. He's got some very good knockouts in Contender Series. He got an awesome spinning back fist, and we've seen him throw a lot of spinning back kicks, spinning elbows. He's very unorthodox as well. It's interesting because Barriol, also very unorthodox. I saw when Tom Aspinall pushed him against the cage, I remember he hit him with like an up elbow as he was getting taken down, and he will just throw anything that feels right to kind of smash you in the face right there. He's very kill or be killed, like one of those type of fighters. But I think Parisian, he's very, very durable. If he's the striking going his way, he'll lean on you a lot. He'll make it a dog fight. He loves a fight, and I think that will be enough to get the win here. I think he'll gas him out. He hasn't actually, I don't think he's finished anyone in the UFC yet, Parisian, but he got the 2 finishes on Contender Series. We saw him on Tough not do so great, but he's definitely earned his contract. He's got a good win in the UFC now as well, and I think he'll get another one here. And I'm gonna go, I would say decision, but I just don't know if Barrel has the gas tank to go all 3 rounds. So I'm gonna go Parisian decision or late TKO. That's what I'm gonna go for.
So it's an interesting one, really. I'm gonna say Parisian very confidently because I don't feel like Bardot's gonna be able to do it. I think Parisian, yes, he's a very heavy striker. What he has, which Bardot doesn't, is that he has the attributes to allow for it to work.
Definitely.
But Bardot, he hasn't got the cardio. He's not fast enough. I wouldn't say he's necessarily intelligent enough in a fighting sense to allow for it to work. He's not necessarily throwing at the right times. As you said, he's wild, a little bit sloppy perhaps. He doesn't make it work. I think maybe if he was a bit faster, maybe if he was a bit less predictable, or I wouldn't, not necessarily predictable because you can't predict what he's doing, but if he was a bit more fluid in the way he does it.
I would say predictable though, because unless you're really putting yourself in danger with him, you've just got to watch for the big overhands, really. Like, he's not setting it up with good jabs and leg kicks. He is just winging for the overhands, you know what I mean?
Oh no, of course, of course. But when I say predictable, I mean predictable in the sense that
Yeah.
it's not something you would traditionally think of when you're standing in the octagon with somebody. You don't expect them to start throwing wild overhands. You know, although
Yeah,
yes, you
yeah.
could see it very visibly, although you could see it being set up, which is also another problem for him. It's not something you can necessarily expect. But I think that if he was just a little bit more fluid with everything he did, maybe if I don't know whether he thinks about it before he throws.
Mm.
You know, obviously there'll be that thought of I want to throw this strike, but
Yeah.
I don't know if he's thinking to himself, all right, I'm going to set up. And like you said, he just doesn't really set up. I think Parisian technically, you know, he's a big hitter, but he's quite good technically.
Mm.
He's got some really nice leg kicks. He's got
Yeah.
some really good kicks in general.
Yeah, I wouldn't say athletic, I think that's a push too far, but like he'll throw some good spinning attacks, like good spinning back kicks to the body. He uses that very effectively.
Oh, definitely so. And even when he is striking, you can tell there's some good boxing ability there.
Yeah.
You know, his strikes, they don't always connect as cleanly as what you'd necessarily like to, you know, watch for see for a punch, but they're all land and they're all being thrown with accurate enough technique to cause, you know, the damage he does. And I think that Bordeaux, I think he's going to fatigue early on.
Mm.
I think that he's not going to be able to cope with it. I think that I don't know too much about Bordeaux's wrestling or his takedown defense, but Josh Parisian, yes, you know, we see a lot of knockouts and whatnot in his fights. We see a lot of it in the highlight reels and whatnot, but he can wrestle.
Yeah, he can.
So I think that's something he's going to struggle with. Parisian, I don't know if you've ever seen him, you know, perform a ground and pound,
Mm.
but it is not nice to
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to watch, but it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with second
Yeah,
round
sorry.
finish.
Yeah,
That's for
second
me.
round. So I think that we both went second round there. I think I forgot my own prediction already. But so I just want to dig into this a little bit more. Obviously, it sounds like being very one-sided towards Parisian, which I think openly we'll both admit we are.
Very much so.
But there's definitely always two fighters in a fight. That sounds very stupid, but Barrett has a way to win this fight, in my opinion, because Parisian keeps his hands very low, and I wanna know if he'll be able to take a big overhand if it connects flush. Do you know what I mean? Like I could see him I think he'll be in trouble early on. I think he'll get hit with some big shots.
I do agree to a certain extent, but I don't know if Badot's gonna be able to necessarily throw out overhand because I just don't think he's gonna be in a position where he's gonna have enough time. I think that he's gonna be on him
Mm.
from the start. I think he's gonna be on the end of I think Badot's gonna be on the end of big heavy strikes. I don't think he's gonna be in a position. I think that yes, he might try and throw an overhand, but I think he's gonna be way too fatigued before it even gets to that point.
I mean, yeah, I think he also often swings and misses, doesn't he? Like, I think that we'll see that a lot early on, where Parisian will know the main weapon that he uses, and Parisian's a smart enough guy not to get caught with it. But this is MMA, and I mean, this is not as one-sided as fights we often see. So I'm not completely ruling out Badot, but I think we're both confidently going to pick Parisian in this one.
Oh, definitely so, definitely so. Anyway, moving on to the next fight.
Yeah, the next fight we have. It's an interesting one. We have Neil Magny versus the excellent up and comer in Shavkat Rakhmonov, and I can't wait to dig into this one because Neil Magny he's a true veteran in the UFC and MMA. Yeah, he's got a record of 26-9, so a lot of fights under his name. And last time out against Max Griffin, he looked very good. He got hurt early. I remember the knockdown. But you can never count out Neil Magny because he rallies back. He's tough. He's the pace he can put out like 5 round cardio for days. He'll never slow down, and he really grinds on people. But talking of that, it's Shavkat Rakhmonov. I was like, he's looked untouchable so far in his MMA career. The last time out, I think he got the spinning back kick knockout. It was beautiful. I can't remember the guy's name he was fighting. But the guy was actually really talented. Like he was doing really well. I was surprised, but hits him with that spinning back kick. I remember it kind of wrapped around the back of the head and dropped him, and he just follows up with the ground and pound. Um, so I think I don't want to be I don't like going against Neil Magny, but I think it's a tough one to pick him in this one.
So it's going to be a hard one. What I like about Neil Magny is that whenever you watch him fight, he's generally very calm and composed.
Mm-hmm.
He's very calculated in what he throws. He uses that jab really well, and I think that it would typically be a Neil Magny fight if it was maybe another fighter of this kind of ability. I think Shakhmadov, he's on such a run at the moment. He's absolutely smashing it, 15-0, and he's very, very versatile. He's got some really good wrestling. I think it's a single leg he's really good at.
Just excellent everywhere.
His striking on the feet and whatnot. And I think that Magny, I think that it's Magny's a big guy.
Yeah.
He's a very tall guy. I imagine he's a little bit taller than him. So I think that, he could potentially use that reach, and I think that Shakhmadov is gonna potentially do a little bit better when it comes down to taking him down. I think that he's gonna go for the shoots. Neil Magny, he's good in the clinch.
Yeah, he's good in the clinch, but we've seen him get dominated by wrestlers in the past.
And that's what I mean, I think although he's showing the clinch, a fighter like Shakhmadov, I don't think he's going to be able to stay in that clinch for long. I think he's going to be on the ground, and I think that Shakhmadov's going to do it from there.
Rachmanov. Shavkat
Rachmanov.
It's just a nightmare, man. These names are getting harder and harder each week.
Honestly, a name like that you want to remember as well.
Yeah, I'm sure after this weekend, everyone will remember the name.
Shavkat Rachmanov. There it is.
I mean, Bilal Muhammad, remember the name.
Yeah, of course. But as far as this fight's going to go, Neil Magny, I think he's going to remain calm and composed. I think that Shavkat's just going to pick him apart, if I'm honest with you. I think that he's going to use his striking excellently. I believe that if Neil Magny does begin to apply the pressure, which is likely, he does occasionally apply pressure. A lot of the time he uses that jab to get in. I think that he's just going to shoot. And if he doesn't get the shoot, it's going to get a clinch. And although Neil Magny is very good at that clinch, Shavkat's going to take him down.
Yeah.
So it should be an interesting one. The outcome of it, I'm going to go with Shavkat. I would like to see Neil Magny win, but I can't see it necessarily happen.
If he does that, man.
That would be amazing.
So how do you think it will end?
How do I think it will end? Well, Shavkat's interesting, right? Because if you look at his record, 15-0, I think 8 of them are by KO and 7 of them by submission.
Yeah.
So he loves to finish.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't know if it's going to be a knockout. I really don't. I could see a submission from a ground move because I think Neil Magny's going to be able to defend that.
So what, you think it will be a submission or won't be?
I think it will be a submission.
Yeah, I agree. I think Shavkat will win. I'm gonna say second round submission or third maybe.
I'm gonna go third. I think Neil Magny's got some good endurance.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna make it to the third round, and I think that the amount of punishment he's gonna receive, Shavkat's gonna take it.
Yeah, I agree.
That's my thoughts about that fight.
Yeah, same. It's hard to see where Magny can win this fight, to be honest. I don't think he's better on the feet necessarily. Not necessarily, sorry. I think a better endurance, maybe better in the clinch, but I don't know, man. I can't see him winning this fight.
I just think with Shavkat, the technique he's got, striking, I think he's just going to pick it apart. He's so clean, he's so accurate. It's watching him throw. I don't know what his accuracy stats are off the top of my head, but I imagine they're quite high.
Yeah.
I'll get him up now even because I am interested to know. But he's just a very, very accurate striker, very clean, very concise, lands a lot of nice shots. So it should be interesting. And when it goes to the ground, it's something different.
Yeah, I think he could win, but he could stand up with Neil and win the fight that way. But I think the easiest route to victory is going for the takedown. He's a bit smaller. Neil Magny's got a 3-inch reach advantage as well, so I think he'll use that early on. The jab will be in his face, but I can't see Shavkat having many problems with Neil Magny. If I'm honest, I think it will be quite comfortable, which I don't like saying about Neil Magny.
Of course, it's quite interesting. So looking at the stats for striking accuracy, when it comes down to the significant strikes, I think Magny has a significant strike accuracy, like landing percentage of 68%.
That's good. That's really good.
That's really quite high. With with Shavkat having an accuracy of 53%.
Yeah,
You know, so,
Magnes is super high, man.
yeah,
That's really good to have that. Well, 68, did you say?
68. So
Yeah,
it's
very
almost 7
impressive.
out of every 10 shots
Yeah,
he throws, he
that's
lands.
so impressive.
Which makes a lot of sense, to be fair, because he is just very calm and composed.
Yeah.
And you don't see him necessarily swing
Mm.
like crazy.
No,
You know, and that's just mental,
and he
honestly.
keeps it very straight as well. Like he'll pump a lot of 1-2s, leg kicks. He uses front. It's all very like it's all kicks to keep you on the back. It's all strikes to keep you on the back foot.
Oh, definitely so,
Yeah.
definitely so.
So moving into the main event now, it's very interesting when we got Arman Tsarukyan versus Matthias Gamrot. And what's your thoughts on this? Because I'm not sure their rankings off the top of my head, but I want to say they're around 13, 14, 15, like around that area. And for them to be main eventing at this point in their career, it just shows how high level they are and how much they've impressed the UFC. So what's your thoughts on this fight?
So it should be a really interesting one. Both are really good fighters. Gamrot very much up and coming. Same for Tsarukyan as well.
Mm.
They're both similar to a certain extent, but I feel like what Tsarukyan is what Gamrot is, but slightly more advanced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like they're very, very similar fighters. I think that with the exception of maybe the first fight on this card, a lot of these fighters are very, very similar in the sense of their style, and I think that the UFC has done a really, really good job at pairing all the fights up this week. I think that they've done very well in putting the correct fights together. And I think that they're all going to be relatively contested with maybe a couple. But I think that with this one, Gamrot, you look at Gamrot, his wrestling is amazing.
Yeah.
Single legs, solid. Double legs, solid. Ankle picks.
Yeah, the way he jumps on the ankle is insane. It's like, I remember the first takedown that Khabib shot on Conor McGregor, where he was like halfway across the octagon, and all of a sudden he's just on the ankle without like snap, just grabs hold of the ankle and he drags that leg up every time. He'll pull your leg up and kick your bottom leg out, or just pull you down. This is such an interest. I'm so excited for this fight.
Honestly, and yes, so am I. It's such an exciting fight. Obviously, you know, this card, it's not full of big names, but a fight night like this is full of up and comers. And this is kind of the fight. If you were to watch a fight night, you know, obviously there are fight nights with bigger names, such as the previous one.
Yeah.
But these guys here, these are going to be the future champions.
Yeah.
Not necessarily these two, but a lot of these fighters on this card are going to be, a lot of them are quite young. Gamrot, is he 25?
Yeah, right. They're around that age, and both very young in their MMA careers as well. Do you know, like we haven't seen. There's no videos of them being knocked out cold going around the internet or anything like that. Like you don't see that with these two because, I mean, we saw Arman's fight with Islam, and to be able to wrestle with Islam Makhachev like that blows my mind because we've seen Islam dominate 99% of people he's fought, and Arman Tsarukyan, which was the first ever person to take Islam Makhachev down, and he tried. I think he got a few takedowns in that fight, and he put him in a couple dangerous positions. Islam's striking defense was good enough to go through and get the win, but I think Tsarukyan might take this one. I think he's just a bit more advanced on the feet. I think his kicks will be the difference. He kicks very well. He's a very powerful guy. We saw his last performance in Joel Alvarez, and the blood, man. Like, do you remember it? We cut the top of his nose open.
Honestly, I was watching that and I was thinking to myself, like, this is going to be a doctor stoppage after the first round.
It was brutal.
Because the amount of blood, he literally, I kid you not, it must have been like a third of his body just caked in it.
Yeah.
And it was hard because, like, obviously, you know, we all knew where it was coming from. But if you didn't see the strike, if you didn't, you think it was coming from anywhere.
Yeah.
Around his head or neck or back.
I was surprised to see it on the top of his nose, like that much blood to come from there.
I mean, it really shows, you know, just how much power there is, you know, from this fighter.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mental. I think that Gamrot's good. You know, he's done really well in his first 4 fights. I think his first fight was against Kutaleze, who we spoke about on our last podcast.
Yeah.
And it was a split decision. It was a very close fight. Could have gone either way. You know, hence why it's probably a split decision, but it was probably right cool. But Gamrot's looked really, really good. And Gamrot, he's very versatile. He's very good at everything. Every time you watch a Gamrot fight, every time you watch his next fight, it's almost like he's getting better. It's almost like he's learning additional skills. You know, from one fight, you know, he he had that wrestling and he had that striking, and the next fight, all of a sudden his striking has been expanded, and now
Yeah.
he's throwing leg kicks and body kicks, and I think that he's really progressing, and you can really tell that his development is improving as a fighter significantly. Tsarukyan, wow, what a fighter!
Such a talent.
He is quite literally the most, as far as like up and comers, and like because you said about Islam Makhachev, take him down. No one else has done that. His wrestling is amazing.
Yeah.
Watching him shoot, you don't see him go to shoot. He just shoots.
Yeah.
It's literally come out of nowhere. It can't be telling you. It's this right there. It happens. Before you know it, he's shot. Before you know it, he's secured a takedown. He's amazing at wrestling. He's a really good striker. His kicks are amazing. His punching's amazing. He's really good all round, and I think you said like he could be a top 5 fighter.
Yeah, I think he will be in the next year, to be honest.
I'd have to agree. He's just that good. I think that Gamrot and him are very similar. I just think Tsarukyan had a bit more of an advantage as far as I think he's a bit more of an advanced fighter, had a bit more of there's a slightly greater skill there. I think they have similar techniques, but I think it's a bit more advanced. So I'm going to go with a decision.
Same.
I'm going to go with decision. Tsarukyan, that's my thoughts.
Same. I think they're both too high level to one of them really go out there and put a beating on. I mean, I said this about Danny again. I want to say Evo Lev. I think that's right.
Yeah, that is it.
Yeah, and we were horribly wrong on that one. But this one, I would be very surprised if it's domination either side. Both such high level guys. I think Gamrot was the first person to submit Jeremy Stevens since like 2010, 2009. So
2009 since Joe Lazon.
Joe Lazon, yeah, and we know how good Joe Lazon is on the ground. So yeah, I think we both agree on a decision. And one more little thing I want to talk on just before we wrap it up is news today that Bobby Green has pulled out against Jim Miller and Donald Cerrone stepping in. How do you feel about that one? Are you more excited for the matchup, or were you more excited for the Bobby Green matchup?
So it's really interesting. Obviously, Cerrone was supposed to fight last week. Lazon popped his knee, which is unfortunate. We didn't actually talk about that.
No.
We probably should have, but I think that it's a shame to see Bobby Green not fight because we all want to see Bobby Green fight.
Everyone loves Bobby Green.
Everyone.
I mean, Solly won't turn up now, so.
yeah, of course. But I think that with Cerrone, you want to see Cerrone fight. He's had 2 fights called off. One because of him, I believe, was it an illness?
Yeah, food poisoning, I think.
Food poisoning, and the other one being, due to Lazon's knee popping out. So, yes, it is disappointing to see Bobby Green pull out the fight. Seeing Cerrone step in, I'm interested to see how he does.
I think in many ways it might be a bit of a better matchup because I think Bobby Green right now, although he's age-wise at the later stage of his career, he's never been better than he is now. I mean, obviously his last fight against Islam Makhachev was rough, but most people who fight Islam Makhachev is just rough. And he stepped in on like a few days' notice, and he had no business being in there with Islam at that point. But going from Islam Makhachev to Jim Miller, I think this is a much better matchup for Jim Miller, and I'm very excited for the fight.
Oh, very much so. It should be really good. I am very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, so that's all we got to talk about. So thank you for listening to Combat Chatters podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, YouTube, all the socials. Thank you for listening to today's podcast.
Thank you.